Mortal Kombat is the perfect example of sacrificing story and character for fan service, and although, to be fair, the fan service part of the movie is pretty entertaining, the entire thing was brought down by a key element. An element that was supposed to make all of it work but instead ended up dragging down what could have been the perfect Mortal Kombat adaptation. Let's discuss. From the get-go, Mortal Kombat demonstrates to its audience that it is capable of delivering on violence and gore, and makes a promise to stay as faithful to the original game as possible. And it does it by introducing Bihan's Sub-Zero and Hanzo's Scorpion. The movie makes no effort trying to even explain the conflict between the Lin Kuei and the Shirai Ryu, because this movie does not really care about the general audience or about those who have never played a Mortal Kombat game. This is a movie made specifically for fans and those familiar with the Mortal Kombat mythos. And honestly, I admired that, until the very next scene when they not only introduced a totally made up character that's never appeared in the games, but made sure the audience knew he was the main character. And just to be clear, I'm absolutely not against the filmmakers introducing original characters. To me, it's kind of their way of contributing to the lore. I'm against introducing a totally new character and give him zero personality while filling his backstory with an insane amount of cliches. Let's see. The Chosen One.
It's not a birthmark, Cole. It means you've been chosen.
Chosen?
Check. A family to protect. Check. Related to a legend. Check. Linked to a prophecy.
The prophecy has been fulfilled.
Check. Everything about this Cole Young character is so generic that you really have to ask yourself why it needed to be created. The creation of an original protagonist has to be justified. Otherwise, the character is nothing but a pointless addition. And the worst part for me is that all of these cliches could be acceptable if the character was not so bland and boring. Louis Tan is not a very good actor, so he couldn't even elevate the character with his line deliveries. Everything he says just sounds so wooden, with no conviction, and at the end you don't care about what's supposed to be the movie's main focus. I don't even think Cole Young has an arc. When we first meet him, he's fighting in a cage to provide for his family, but that is not what drives him throughout the film. He doesn't join the fight for Earthrealm because of his family specifically. As a character, there is nothing that he wants. He isn't pursuing a dream. He doesn't have any purpose. The only difference about his character is that he starts the movie losing all of his fights and ends the movie winning all of his fights thanks to his newfound power. Even the way he unlocks his powers is poorly done in my opinion. All he needed to unlock his powers was for his family to be in danger, which not only feels incredibly lazy, but proves that his stupid family is in the story to motivate him when he needs some motivation, and again, it's the laziest way to write protagonists. We don't really know anything about his family. They are just there to be rescued, and after the first, the second, the third, and the fourth time, it got really boring. And it doesn't even stop there. You create an original character in the world of Mortal Kombat, and the best you could do with his powers is give him an armor and like knives? Jeez, even his powers are incredibly boring. So I guess Cole Young is the only protagonist in history whose superpower is literally plot armor. And what's sad about this is that it's completely a writing problem because 90% of the characters are exactly like Cole Young. They tried a little bit with Jax and Sonya Blade. They are one of the few characters that felt alive. Sonya, for example, just wants to be accepted. She wants to be acknowledged, whether it is by Jax or Raiden. It's not deeply explored, but at least it's there, and it makes a big difference. It's Mortal Kombat, okay? I'm not expecting Citizen fucking Kane, but at the end of the day, I need to care about the characters I'm watching. Otherwise, the fight scenes will feel weightless and like they don't matter at all. I didn't care about the main protagonist fighting the main antagonist in the third act, and that just means one thing. The movie has failed to make me care. I think Liu Kang is the biggest disappointment for me because he's always been my second favorite character behind Scorpion. Liu Kang and Kung Lao didn't just take a back seat. They were completely sidelined in favor of Bo Yang. But it's not like anything would have changed if they were given more screen time, because whenever Liu Kang and Kung Lao were on screen, they were either explaining things or fighting. We never got time to get to know them, and I never found myself asking for an opportunity to know them because they were never really fun to watch, honestly. At least they got some fun moments. At least Kung Lao got to split some flying demon in half while declaring
flawless victory.
And Liu Kang got this fire dragon or whatever. The only character that was at least fun to watch in my opinion was Kano. He injected so much life into this movie. You know you fucked up when Kano of all people is way more interesting than your main protagonist. Kano is probably the reason they did not include Johnny Cage in this, because having two quippy characters in a movie that takes itself seriously is a no-no. The standouts for me were Sub-Zero and Scorpion because their conflict has weight and a rich backstory which gives these characters motivation. Well, too fucking bad Scorpion is barely in this fucking movie. Who needs the greatest rivalry in Mortal Kombat when we could have Cole Young bore us to death? At least the animated movie recognized how great Sub-Zero and Scorpion's rivalry is and made it its main focus, and it's the best Mortal Kombat movie ever made. Even the games highlight Sub-Zero and Scorpion's rivalry in pretty much all the trailers because that's what people respond to the most. This movie has Sub-Zero and Scorpion on the posters to trick people into thinking they are going to get that rivalry for most of the film when it's not the case at all. They literally fight twice, at the beginning and at the end, and Scorpion only appears as Scorpion once. And all of that in favor of this new character. A character they didn't even bother to flesh out. I just don't get it. Say whatever you want about the 1995 Mortal Kombat, but at least Liu Kang was a decent protagonist with clear motivation and growth. There is just nothing like that here. I think it's pretty clear now that the one big problem for me is Cole Young. He significantly dragged the movie down for me, and while it's not the only problem I have with this movie, he's the main issue because he's the focal point and is on screen most of the time, so the fact that it's not interesting at all made it a lot harder to enjoy the movie. With all that being said, Mortal Kombat is not a disaster. I enjoyed quite a few stuff in this movie actually. For example, for a movie with a budget of $50 million, the special effects were pretty good, I'll say. Goro looked better than I expected. The fight scenes, while a bit choppy at times, were fine most of the time. I thought the editing was pretty weak for the fight scenes. The quick cuts didn't really help enhance the fights. It frustrated me a little bit, I won't lie. The editing overall was not great, but it was not that bad. I also really liked Joe Taslim as Bihan, aka Sub-Zero, and obviously Hiroyuki Sanada as Scorpion, and I really wish the movie was more about them as promised. As for a sequel, I do want one, and I hope we get one just because I want to see what they do with Johnny Cage. Hopefully they don't make him boring. That would be a crime. I won't forgive them if they do that. Honestly, this movie is fine. It's worse than the 1995 movie in terms of story, but the special effects and fights are better for obvious reasons. But it's definitely better than Annihilation. Anything is better than that atrocity.
Mother, you're alive. Too bad you will die.
If I had to give Mortal Kombat a rating, I would say 5 out of 10. Boring protagonists, do better next time.